世界に
This scene blew my mind. The show had built Eren up as the protagonist, and we had seen so many similar shows that we all knew he was going to be okay, right? But for a brief moment, we were caught off guard. Everything that we knew about this story was shattered for just that moment. But what if I told you that Attack on Titan kept that same energy up? That actually, it has kept fooling you ever since. But first, there are a lot of really wild takes when it comes to Attack on Titan. More so than almost any show in recent memory. Really, there are as many takes about Attack on Titan as there are fanfics about Levi meeting Luffy. Wait, there's only one? So I've been thinking, why are there so many different takes on a show that has a very simple plot? Or, well, it used to. Let's first look at how Attack on Titan shifted its focus from the first 2 seasons to the latter, and then we'll get into waayyyy and everybody else look dumb as hell. The first season was very simple. Monsters on the outside of the wall are trying to eat the people on the inside, main character's mommy gets chowed down on,
and it's mommy makeout day.
And now main character wants to fight the mommy murderers, and I think that that's why the show took off so much. The premise is really simple, but also immediately engaging and interesting. The author, Isayama, has said himself that he thinks one of the most important aspects about Attack on Titan is that it can be summed up in one sentence, and I agree. Fuck, I did it in 2. We'll see that the mass popularity and initial simplicity of Attack on Titan really brought all types of people on board. And I mean, all types. But then the show started to get way more complex and heavy. But first, it got kinda bad. Attack on Titan Season 2 is the worst season. There, I said it. It feels like a true shonen action series in the worst ways, dials down the shock from Season 1 and rehashes the same twist over and over. Eren's a Titan, Annie's a Titan, Reiner's a Titan, Ymir's a Titan, Bertolt's a Titan, and my dad's a Titan.
Yellow.
Like, it's kinda a meme how everyone in Season 2 turns out to really be able to turn into a Titan. I stopped watching during Season 2 because the show got really stale and trite. But then Season 3 happened. Oh my god, what the fuck, Armin? Oh my god! Season 3 of Attack on Titan straight up feels like a completely different show, especially compared to aspects of 2, and that shift fooled me. He said it! Yeah, I heard him. When I jumped back on after it was released, I was shocked at the state of the show. Whereas Season 2 was essentially the Where's Waldo of Titans for the Blind, Season 3 is fucking Anime Farm. Wait, it's Animal Farm? No, it's not. Don't censor me, that's fucking Irwinian. Season 4 of the show is likely the biggest departure from any other. Not only is there a time skip here and a different studio, but we don't even open with our cast of usual child soldiers. Instead, we open with other slave child soldiers. The new studio, being changed from WIT Studio to MAPPA, was pretty genius and seems intentionally done. It's shocking to start the final season with a new art style and seemed like a bad idea to start for me, but I now think that it was actually fantastic. Not only does it keep us on our toes, but it also allows this season to feel grittier, truly like a time skip, but also even darker than other seasons, which it definitely is.
そこにある命をこの世から駆逐するまで
And while some people didn't like the season opening on other characters that weren't our previous cast, I think that it's perfect for the narrative. As we'll see, characters like Falco and Gabby are this show's voice. They're the true protagonists of Attack on Titan, especially Gabby, and I'm damn sure that fact fooled somebody out there. Don't even say that you weren't fooled. Don't fucking say. I don't think I've ever seen a show have a shift from essentially popcorn shock and action to a more refined thematic parfait. I absolutely love the shift here, and it actually makes seasons 1 and 2 much better with the context of 3 and 4. But have you seen a show that has shifted like that? I'm genuinely curious, so if you have, let me know in the comments. But how did this shift even happen? Season 3 barely has any Titans in it, and 3 and 4 are much more focused on the politics, characters, and themes of the show. Well, let's just look at the source to see how this shift happened. Isayama is very candid about what influences his writing. From little things, such as how Mikasa was named after a warship because he believes that manga with warship-named characters will do better, to really big revelations. Isayama came out in an interview in 2016 and said that he himself was influenced by the release of the Attack on Titan anime. He said Eren is a character I figured out as I went along. When the manga got adapted into an anime and I got to hear Eren's voice, that helped me flesh him out too. I mean, these Titans show up all of a sudden and he's not only unafraid, but decides to go kill them. That's just not a realistic character. But then, while he may say those things, you can hear a weakness in his voice actor's voice, which makes it sound like he's bluffing. I've started to like Eren as a character more and more ever since. Interesting, so the character came into focus for you from watching the anime adaptation? It did. Tetsuro Araki, the director, and Yuki Kaji, Eren's voice actor, had a good approach to him. The anime's impact on the manga is by no means small. So wait, the adaptation of the manga led to the author rethinking certain characters based on how they were portrayed there, and very likely changed them to be more complex for future chapters. That's a pretty big deal, right? Like, who knows who these characters would have ended up being if it weren't for the influence of the anime, right? Isayama outright admits that his initial manga iteration of Eren was unrealistic. So then, does he not care about things like character consistency and realism? Well, he just didn't initially focus on character writing. Isayama in this same interview also said, "Do you start with creating the world first and then populate it with characters second?" Yes, I start with the setting and then create the characters based on what actors the setting calls for. And he also said that he began Attack on Titan with an ending already decided, but that not every plot point was mapped out. So Isayama had a clear setting, premise, ending, and structure in mind, but it was vague enough for him to mold it. Which makes sense. I mean, this is pretty typical for writing, but the interesting discussion is how someone gets from point A to point B. There are authors who have a structure clearly developed from the start, where the plot is all laid out, while there are other authors who simply create characters, which they then allow to act however they want. This is why Eren was a less fully formed character before the anime released, because Isayama's writing style was more concerned with the plot rather than character. He needed Eren simply because he believed that the plot needed someone like Eren. But what explains that crazy shift from seasons 1 and 2 to 3 and 4? Maybe Isayama began to change the focus in his writing? Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire is a series that is the definition of a character-centered narrative. The chapters are separated entirely based on characters, and the books have you shifting between the perspectives of these different characters. George R.R. Martin, the author, has even explicitly stated that the books are written by crafting characters and then letting them drive what happens. To explain writing styles, Martin has said, "I think there are two types of writers, the architects and the gardeners. The architects plan everything ahead of time, like an architect building a house. They know how many rooms are going to be in the house, what kind of roof they're going to have, where the wires are going to run, what kind of plumbing there's going to be. They have the whole thing designed and blueprinted out before they even nail the first board up. The gardeners dig a hole, drop a seed, and water it. They kind of know what seed it is. They know if they planted a fantasy seed or mystery seed or whatever, but as the plant comes up and they water it, they don't know how many branches it's going to have. They find out as it grows. And I'm much more a gardener than an architect." I think Isayama started as an architect, but has really shifted to more of a gardener as the story has come along. Why do I think that? Well, Isayama started watching Game of Thrones 60 hours, and 6 seasons later, he left the whole thing dead on the battlefield. He seems to like just about everything about the show, from its plotting and casting to the production's budget and ability to create a fully realized Dark Ages world, to its ability to humanize even the detestable characters, going into his thoughts on Joffrey and Theon a bit. He highly recommends the show, and suggests that it might shape his own work in some way. Now I'm gonna go on a limb here and say that the influence from Game of Thrones wasn't exactly small either. Did you expect that when you clicked on this video you would learn that Attack on Titan was influenced by Game of Thrones? Yes? What the fuck? If we look at how drastically different Season 4 is, even from Season 3, we can see that Isayama has made not only his writing more complex, but his characters. Eren, Mikasa, Armin, Levi, etc. all became more complex characters with more intricate motivations. The part that Isayama was particularly influenced by from Game of Thrones was the humanization of complex characters. I mean, let's just say some characters in Season 4 of Attack on Titan aren't particularly, godly. But the series is able to show us their thoughts and motivations honestly, and without shying away from the more questionable reasonings. This is a show that has managed to recontextualize earlier characters who were depicted as purely monstrous and give them a more human side, and vice versa. It's clear that the latter portion of Attack on Titan has a more nuanced look on morality than the earlier portions. Characters do what they do not because they're bad or good, but because they're in positions where they've convinced themselves that they feel they must do these things. They're human and often complicated. And I think this works so extremely well because, if I'm being honest, I'm not sure if, when writing the earlier portions of Attack on Titan, Isayama meant for characters like Zeke or Grisha or Reiner to be more sympathetic later on. Not until we get deeper into the series, where Isayama has become much more focused on character, do I think these things began to stir in his head. About this idea of dark characters becoming complex, George R.R. Martin has said, "One of the things I wanted to explore with Jamie, and with so many of the characters, is the whole issue of redemption. When can we be redeemed? Is redemption even possible? I don't have an answer. But when do we forgive people? How many good acts make up for a bad act? If you're a Nazi war criminal and then spend the next 40 years doing good deeds and feeding the hungry, does that make up for being a concentration camp guard? I don't know the answer, but these are the questions worth thinking about. I want there to be a possibility of redemption for us, because we all do terrible things. We should be able to be forgiven, because if there is no possibility of redemption, what's the answer then?" This idea of redemption is used in Attack on Titan as well. Can Reiner be forgiven for what he did when he was a child? Can Grisha be forgiven for how he treated Zeke? Can Eren be forgiven for all of his atrocities? These questions are left up to the viewer. But I don't think that means the material isn't subtly guiding us in a direction. And I think that direction involves a character I spoke of previously, Gabby. One of the most important scenes in the entire show is just with 3 characters in a room surrounding the idea of forgiveness and freedom. If Attack on Titan is about just one thing, I think it's about freedom. And while the rest of the cast wrestles with physical freedom, from walls, from camps, from the cycles of violence, we have a character releasing themselves mentally, being deprogrammed and wanting a better future free from the bloodshed. Gabby goes through the opposite journey of characters like Eren and Zeke. While they became programmed to fight, to hate, to kill, Gabby's journey in Season 4 sees her becoming aware. Her, Falco, Grisha, Reiner, and a few others are characters in the show that truly get to see and experience the carnage that the cycle of violence causes on both sides, and the heinous ideas and actions that it makes people feel that they have to commit. And with this full knowledge, they choose to escape that path. These characters manage to deprogram themselves because they don't view another side to the equation that must be eradicated. They no longer feel that there's only one path forward. And hey, Grisha's still good even though the ghost of his future past son makes him do some bad things. Oh wait, my dad's here too.
Hey boy, I brought my boys Luffy and Levi with me.
It had been a day since the fall of Shiganshina, and Luffy couldn't get a wink of sleep. If you were to hear what he went through, you might assume that he may be upset that so many people died. Luffy then grabbed Levi's fat cock.
The show started us off from the viewpoint inside the walls, from someone who felt trapped, and this resulted in Eren continuing to be trapped for the rest of the series. He was radicalized slowly. Even with all of the bloodshed and atrocities in Season 4, it still managed to show us the viewpoints of characters who have chosen a new path. And I think the show has managed to fool everyone, and that the characters who are the true heroes may have been the villains earlier, and that the freedom from the walls wasn't the true freedom that the show ended up commenting on. Attack on Titan is a show that started with a clear black and white view on violence and what's right and its messaging. But then things got complicated. The characters got complicated, and even the writer began writing the story differently. Isayama became more aware as a writer, choosing to instead focus more on the characters in his world rather than just the structure of the narrative. The characters, who started out as pawns, became real people, just like in the world of Attack on Titan itself. The scene with Eren being eaten wasn't just shocking because we thought the protagonist had died, but because it went against the conventions of what we thought about stories and how they're written and supposed to be told. And Attack on Titan managed to do this again by making its protagonist a cautionary tale and showing a world and characters with immense moral depth. This scene had actually been playing out in the background the entire series. Slowly but surely, the story began to plant the seed for the future, not only with killing off our old protagonist, but also writing conventions in general. In the end, Isayama even fooled himself. He initially created a series with characters who were used to get the series popular, and were used as necessary tools. But then, from his influences, he shifted focus. Through these influences, Isayama not only shifted writing styles, but grew to look at his own characters and world differently. So that's how this show, that started as freedom from monsters outside of a wall, became freedom from bias and prejudice, and even freedom from writing conventions. And that's how I think the show has really fooled us all.
But also, a lot of people think differently about this show. And some people think, in particular, the show is saying some bad things. And if you want to see a response to some of that, you can click this video. Regardless, thank you so much for watching. You can like, you can subscribe, and you can follow me on my socials, which are right here. I'll see you next time.